Hi, I'm Joshua Einstein. I'd like to welcome you to SaveJersey.com, New Jersey's #1 site for conservative news and views from the Garden State. Today we have the honor of being joined by District 9's Republican congressional nominee, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Rabbi Boteach, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we are glad, and I'm sure our readership will be very interested to listen to what you have to say. So I guess the first question really is, what motivated you to get involved and to run in the first place?
Well, a few things. Firstly, as many people are aware, in 2009, Muammar Gaddafi tried to move into the home next door to me while visiting the United Nations for their opening session. And I was amazed at how little support I received from the Democrat-controlled city in stopping a mass murderer, an international terrorist, someone who bombed American troops in places like the La Belle discotheque, let alone airplanes like Pan Am 103 in 1988. So I am a big believer we have to stop the world's murderers, and here a guy was coming to New Jersey, and there was barely any support. Second, I think America needs new values. I think that our country is in need of renewal and a period of renaissance, and I think that I am uniquely qualified to bring a new conversation about values, like making marital counseling tax deductible in order to really save the institution of marriage instead of fighting over a wedge issue like gay marriage for the next 30 years. There's a 50% divorce rate. It's time we tackled it. We have to do something about altruism and selflessness among American youth, like making a year of national service after high school. I think we have to recreate an American Sabbath and a day of a family day on Sundays by giving tax incentives to businesses that are closed on Sundays, because here in New Jersey and Bergen County, we have the last, essentially the last blue laws that shut major stores, department stores, shopping malls on Sunday, and yet we have the highest retail zip code in the United States here in Bergen County. So it's not as if sales are hindered, they're actually helped. And finally, I think that a values campaign like the one I'm running extends to the most important issue of all, which is economic policy. I believe that what people seek most in life is human dignity. Even more than food, clothing, and shelter, we all seek dignity. And that means we don't want to be made wards of the state, and we don't want to receive government handouts. Dignity accrues through self-reliance and self-sufficiency. So I believe in economic policy that leads to greater opportunity and more jobs, not to more entitlements that ultimately bankrupt the nation and rob the populace of their dignity.
Mm-hmm. So we'll get to some of the specifics later on in the interview, some of what you mentioned, which are very interesting. But first I wanted to ask, how have you found the campaign trail so far? Have people been receptive to you, and what sort of events have you been doing to date?
Running for office is an incredible education. You have to hone your skills. You have to get very focused. When it comes to someone like me, I have to take the values that are so dear to me and ally them with policy proposals. People have been extremely receptive. I won the Republican nomination, thank God, with 58% of the vote in a three-way race. We have had incredible national media coverage for this candidacy because it is bringing a lot of new ideas to the public discourse. And we do so many events around the district, meeting voters, meeting families, participating in public events.
That is great. So
the nice thing for me is that because this is a congressional race and the district isn't huge, I'm able to bring my children to so many of the events. And they meet people from every walk of life, and they get to participate in the political process. And they get to see patriotic Americans who actually are engaged in politics instead of just watching more reality TV at night and not participating and allowing other people to make all the decisions for them.
So how would Congressman Boteach be different from Congressman Pascrell?
Well, we'd be hugely different. First of all, in the 9th District of New Jersey, we have one of the largest Arab American populations in the country. And Congressman Pascrell is seen as their champion. And yet he has not spoken out against the slaughter in Syria. He did not speak out against the slaughter in Libya while Gaddafi was alive and slaughtering his people in front of the eyes of the world. He signed a letter condemning Israel for the Gaza blockade. This was a 2010 letter, a very infamous letter that's known as the Gaza 54 letter. I don't believe that you're pro-Arab just because you're critical of Israel. First and foremost, if I were the congressman of the 9th District, and God willing, when I become the congressman, I will use that voice to protect human life worldwide. The United States is the voice of liberty. It is the light of freedom to the rest of the world. Congressman Pasquale has not participated in that. You know, what amazes me about the Arab Spring and the slaughter of so many innocent Arabs, especially under Saddam Hussein, which, thank God, George W. Bush ended. Saddam killed 800,000 Arabs. What amazes me is that, again, Congressman Pasquale has a very large Arab-American population who are his constituents. He found time to propose legislation in the House to make pickled peppers tax deductible or to limit the taxes on them, to take the New Jersey Devils hockey goalie and create a day of commemoration for him. You know, these things may be important, but are they as important as calling on President Bashar al-Assad to be arrested for war crimes, for crimes against humanity? So that's the first thing. The second thing is I am going to propose legislation, unlike Congressman Pasquale, that is empowering economically the citizens. A reduction in the payroll tax, a reduction in the corporate tax. We have to give employers incentives to hire more people. In the city of Patterson, where Congressman Pasquale served as mayor for a long time, there's a 15% unemployment rate. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the median household income in Patterson is about $35,000. I mean, these are nearing poverty levels. So with me, you'd have a much more robust economy because I would get the government out of the way to help unleash the New Jersey residents' entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, we have a crushing tax burden here in New Jersey, which is why Congressman Pasquale had to face a fellow Democrat, Steve Rothman, in a Democratic primary. The reason is that people are leaving New Jersey and we lost a congressional seat. I think Texas added 4 or 5 seats. So people are going to states like Texas that have no state income tax. Here in New Jersey, the highest income tax rate is about, state income tax rate is about 9.5%. Add that to 35% federal income tax, which President Obama now wants to raise for people earning $200,000, a family earning $250,000 or more. You know, try to be a family like mine. Thank God we have 9 children. $250,000. You're not rich at all. You're not rich at all.
A bunch of children.
Well, let alone other policies that also affect the tax rate, like school vouchers, which I support. When parents are paying their tax money, they should be allowed to use that money to send their children to the school of their choice. It's outrageous that parents are forced to send kids to failing public schools. If you want to send them to public school, that's your choice. God bless you. You want to send them, you want to have a tax voucher or just a school voucher to send them to a private school, that's also your choice. The educational environment of your kids is your choice. And Congressman Pasquale doesn't support this. Unfortunately, so many Democratic legislators are really in league with unions that don't always support the needs of the children. Sometimes they support the needs of the teachers above the needs of the children. So there would be huge changes when we knock Congressman Pasquale out of Congress.
That is terrific, and I definitely like some of the details, lowering payroll tax, income tax, even incentivizing employers to hire seems interesting. But I do want to go back a second to something that you said in an answer to a previous question that seems to conflict with what many perceive as normative conservative or Republican values of government not picking winners and losers. In particular, you argued for tax breaks for married couples that get counseling. But isn't this just another element of the nanny state of the government picking winners and losers in our personal lives?
Not at all. Sorry, a tax reduction is an argument for smaller government, not bigger government. I'm not saying the government should penalize other people.
No, it's fundamentally, why should the government relate to 2 citizens who have married differently from 2 who are cohabitating or who are roommates or any 2 citizens?
Well, my first answer stands. A tax reduction is more limited government. I think there should be tax reductions for so many things. I think the taxes are way too high. In fact, I believe in a flat tax. Secondly, government should always be giving incentives for a certain kind of behavior, which is conducive to the general good. For example, which conservatives object to volunteers to the military receiving assistance with college education? I mean, that's an incentive. No one objects to that because there is no draft. I don't believe there should be a draft. I think there should be a year of national service, but we do need people to volunteer for the military, and they are our heroes, and we reward them with incentives that allow them to have an education. Is there anyone that's objecting to that? Is there a conservative in the country that's objecting to that? Of course not, because it is in the general interest for us to have a military. Well, it is in the general interest of the population to have strong, secure families. It's the same reason why there should be, conservatives argue we should remove the marriage penalty, let alone giving couples an incentive to go and get the help they need rather than divorce, which is ruining the country. 50% divorce rate, a civilization that has a 50% divorce rate has no right to call itself civilized. And if we argue about gay marriage, I would turn the tables on you. Why is opposing gay marriage a conservative position? Why is opposing gay marriage? And I'm not saying that I support gay marriage or I oppose it. What I'm saying is, how did this become the conservative tool by which to keep the institution of marriage intact? The fact is that if every gay man and woman in America moved to Canada tomorrow, we would still have a 50% heterosexual divorce rate. Straight people did a fine job of destroying the institution of marriage without any homosexual help. And I'm into conservative ideas in politics that actually are logical and make sense. Ideology that contravenes basic common sense and basic logic is not something that I support. So you can fight about gay marriage forever, and you're not going to solve the 50% divorce rate. So I am one of the first people in the country that is stating clearly, let's stop this ridiculous fight that has helped nothing when it comes to saving marriages and really save them. You know how you save marriages? You get a husband and wife who are fighting and who are about to spend their time in court blowing all their savings and making their children into yo-yos who go from house to house on weekends. You get to sit down with a professional who can assist them. And a lot of studies show that couples that go for counseling on a weekly basis, they have an 80% survival rate of a troubled marriage. But they can't afford it. The median household income in the United States is about $55,000 a year. Now, counseling ranges from about $120 to $220 an hour. Do that on a weekly basis. You're talking about 15-20% of a couple's disposable income. So that's how you really save marriage. And it's time that people who call themselves conservatives start pursuing policies that really achieve the goals that they themselves enunciate, rather than simply fighting over every wedge issue.
Sure, that was a wonderful answer. Now moving on a little bit, back to fiscal issues. How do you feel about efforts like the Ryan Plan to save Social Security and Medicare and make those programs sustainable through means testing, reform, and limited privatization?
Well, I'm all for some form of privatization, to be sure. It has to be done the right way, and it has to be done in a manner where we have a cross-aisle support. But I absolutely believe that the private sector is always going to manage money, manage investments, and save money much more than the government. The government is an unreliable steward of the public purse. It always has been so. If you don't believe me, ask yourself why the United States has a $14 trillion federal deficit. That is just absurd, insane, irresponsible. And Social Security is not going to last. It's just not going to last. It's paying out much more than it's taking in. And it's almost like our political leaders don't have the guts to make the difficult decisions to save vital programs. There is too much inertia. We're just too stuck. I think Paul Ryan is a very insightful, very knowledgeable, and very skilled legislator who has ideas that must be taken seriously. What we have to do is save vital programs, but in a manner that is affordable and that does not add to the deficit. But we have to curb spending. Let's face it, we are spending addicts in this country. President Obama is a spending addict. He can't stop spending money. Every solution for President Obama is spending more money, hiring more teachers, spending more money on education, without even looking how much we're spending per child. Here, where I live in Englewood, New Jersey, the local school board spends $21,000 to $23,000 per child per annum, and we still have a high and unacceptably high failure rate. That varies from, let's say, a fifth of all students, 20%. At times, I believe it's even been as high as a third. So money isn't the problem. $23,000 per kid is a fortune, an absolute fortune. The Wall Street Journal had a story about 2 years ago that at Asbury Park in New Jersey, they spent $30,000 per child, and I think the failure rate there was something like 35, 40%, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Throwing money at problems that's President Obama's. That's his fatal economic flaw. His fatal flaw when it comes to social policy. He keeps on thinking, if we spend more money. I mean, this country is headed in the direction of Europe. If anyone wants to know where all these programs lead, they lead to what you're seeing in Spain and Ireland and Greece and Britain. It leads to bankruptcy. It leads to government defaulting on its own bonds. It leads to so many financial rescues that the rescuers then need to be rescued. We are headed off an economic cliff unless we stop spending and stimulate the economy, not by raising taxes, which is what President Obama announced that he wants to do in allowing the Bush tax cuts to expire, or the Obama again raises taxes. I mean, who need every dollar? That's how you create jobs. Job makers. You don't put an added tax on the employers. You make it easier for them to hire people. And you don't expand entitlements. You reduce entitlements.
Definitely. Are you still there? Rabbi Boteach? Sorry, the signal was a little bit choppy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Terrific. So I guess I'd like to, one of the other issues, talking about entitlements and the growth of government is a very sad stat that almost 15%, it's about 14.5% of Americans are on food stamps at this moment right now. So what would you do in your role if you were elected, and Bezrat Hashem, you'll be elected, as a congressman, as a representative, to help grow our economy and get people supporting themselves?
Look, people want human dignity. More than anything else, we all want to feel unique, special. We want to be distinguished in some way. That's why we marry, to have someone that loves us and puts us at the center of their attention and affection. We want to make our children feel special. We want to work hard in order to point at things and say they are us, that we've made these things, to take pride in our achievements and our accomplishments. That is a basic human desire. It cuts to the very core, the deepest core of human nature. A government that upends that human desire and makes people wards of the state is a valueless government because it contravenes the fundamental human value of dignity, of the need for dignity. So we have to have government programs that are there for those who cannot provide for themselves, who through certain circumstances are either temporarily unable to provide for themselves or, God forbid, permanently. But for everybody else, we have to give them the incentives to be self-sufficient and self-reliant, which is what they themselves want. It's what they themselves want. I'll just give you an example. Look at the battle going on for the past few years with the teachers' unions. Teachers' unions have now been abandoned, not by conservatives, but by liberals. The New York Times is attacking the teachers' unions constantly. And what do they want? They want tenure after 2 years, after 3 years. They want teachers who are not productive to never be fired. Is that good for the teachers? Forget the kids. It's horrendous for the kids, obviously. But is it good for the teachers? Is it good for someone to be in a job that they themselves know they should not be in, and from which they would be fired if not for the fact that they are being protected by an external agent? If your name, is it good for you, since you have so much money, to give your kids $10 million a a year to blow and say, you don't have to work, I'll take care of you. Is that good for the kid? Since when is a handout to anyone, even if we didn't have a monstrous deficit, since when is it a good thing? It's not a good thing. So we have to have policies that address people's temporary status, that weans them off that dependency and gives them the incentive to become much more self-reliant.
Now,
you know, I have someone working with me in the summer. He's from a family of means. Why? And he goes to college. So he works hard for the whole year. What's he doing working for me this summer? Why isn't he out partying? I'll tell you why. Because his parents said to him, we will pay your tuition. We won't give you $1 through the year to live. You have to work in the summers. And you know why they do that? It's not because they hate their child. It's because they love him. Because they care about him. And he's picking up a lot of skills. So if he had not been forced to work, he wouldn't be picking up those skills. He'd be sitting on a beach. And you know, you got to know when to work. You got to know when to play. But
definitely,
but idleness is not good for our constituents. It's not good for our citizenry.